Order. Libraries.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I rise to congratulate the Treasurer Dominic Perrottet on the delivery of the 2017-2018 New South Wales budget. As the Treasurer said, this is a budget that builds for the next generation. It provides for the present and positions us for the future. It is a great budget, and I want to take the opportunity to highlight some of the great things in it. Before I do that, though, I have to remind you of what the government has already achieved. When the Coalition came to government in 2011, New South Wales was struggling. New South Wales was lagging in most indicators of economic performance. In the financial year 2011 to 2012, New South Wales was the slowest growing economy at just 1.8%. Now it is growing above trend at 2.9%. In 2011-2012, New South Wales had an unemployment rate which was higher than the national average. Now it is 4.6%, which is the lowest of all states. In 2011-2012, net government debt was forecast to be $20 billion. Now net government debt is negative. The Coalition government now has a proven record of delivering responsible budgets, which forecasts average surpluses of $2 billion over this year and the forward estimates, which is why New South Wales has retained its coveted AAA credit rating. It is because of the Coalition's prudent management of the state's finances that we have been able to radically cut stamp duty and taxes for first home buyers in the budget. I know many people who are looking at purchasing their first home, and the Berejiklian government is making it easier for them. This is a real immediate benefit that will see a first home buyer in, say, Woy Woy save up to $24,740. Already, 3,435 first home buyers have benefited from these changes across the Hunter and the Central Coast. This is an increase from just 587 people in those regions who received a stamp duty exemption in the same period last year. In addition to this, first home buyers will save up to $2,900 in stamp duty on lenders' mortgage insurance. The abolition of stamp duty on lenders' mortgage insurance is available to all borrowers and represents a significant reduction in the cost of purchasing, moving or renovating homes. Further still, first home buyers purchasing new homes will benefit from the First Home Owner Grant. This means somebody who builds their first home in, say, Cameron Park can access a grant of $10,000. Our Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, knows that housing affordability is a big issue across our communities, and I'm proud to be part of a government that is delivering such large concessions. Over the next 4 years, the government is committed to investing $80.1 billion in infrastructure. I spoke in my inaugural speech about the 30,000 people from the Central Coast who travel to Sydney and Newcastle each day for work, of which I was previously one. The government has heard them, and this is why we are investing in roads. In total, we are spending $188.3 million on Central Coast roads this year. This includes completing the upgrades on the Wyong Road intersections at Tumby Road and the Pacific Highway. Locals know the long traffic queues of a morning trying to get across the railway bridge at Tuggerah. The bridge has been widened and traffic is flowing through the intersection much easier than before. The same applies to the Tumby Road intersection, which on most evenings was at a standstill past Mingara. It wasn't that long ago the traffic queue along Wyong Road at Enterprise Drive was so long it could sometimes take 10 minutes to get through that one intersection.
Thank you, David Harris.
With the completion of that $28 million upgrade last year, the queues there are firmly in the past, thanks to the New South Wales Berejiklian government. I remember campaigning with the then Liberal candidate and now member for Terrigal, Adam Crouch, in 2015 for an upgrade to the intersection of Empire Bay Drive and the Scenic Road in Kincumber. I am proud to say that this budget delivers on that commitment, which will see a further $1.5 million spent on planning that upgrade. The widening of the F3 between Carryong and Summersby, as well as Tuggerah and Doyleson, will also mean improved travel times. These projects will see all three lanes all the way from North Connects in Sydney to the motorway link at Doyleson. This budget also contributes $23.4 million towards the new bridge across the Hunter River and extra lanes on Coromant Road at Kooragang Island. 33,000 vehicles, including 3,000 trucks, use this road each and every day, and this upgrade will drive future developments on the island at Newcastle Airport and Port Stephens, of course. I am glad that this budget also recognises the importance of completing the Newcastle inner city bypass. That will fulfil the goal of removing heavy vehicles from local Newcastle roads and allow traffic light-free travel from Bennett's Green through to Sandgate. There is $25 million contained in this budget to allow for planning for this project and improvements to flood immunity on Cessnock Road at Testers Hollow. I would like to thank the advocacy of Councillors Rod Doherty, Paul Dunn, John Fagg and former Councillor Bryce Gibson of Cessnock City Council on this particular issue. The government is able to fund these important projects with funds from Restart New South Wales. At the last election, the Coalition made commitments to the people of New South Wales that were fully costed because of the proposed partial leasing of electricity poles and wires. The success of these transactions has enabled us to deliver on our commitments. Those opposite and their record of unfunded and undelivered promises would be funny if it was not so serious. How can they expect to regain the trust of the people of New South Wales if they cannot even say where they will get their funds from? On the topic of local roads, I have, however, saved the best for last. NorthConnex is well underway and this budget allocates $463 million towards the project. I know so many people north of the Hawkesbury, up the F3, who cannot wait for this to be completed. NorthConnex will bypass 21 sets of traffic lights, which will mean that you'll be able to drive all the way from Newcastle down to Melbourne without an intersection. I'm very pleased that the government is investing in our rail network. Last year, the Premier and Minister for Transport visited Woy Woy Station to announce that customers on the Central Coast and Newcastle line will be the first to ride the new intercity fleet trains. The government is delivering 500 new double-decker carriages that will include a 2x2 seat layout, wider seats with armrests and charging stations in each seat, as well as a dedicated space for luggage at a cost of $2.3 billion for the total project. This budget includes $253 million towards these trains this year. The budget also includes a further $25 million towards the planning for the replacement of the XPT fleet for regional rail journeys. The government continues to develop the high-priority Lower Hunter Freight Corridor. $12 million will be spent this year planning for this goal of increasing the efficiency and reliability of the rail network by separating the majority of freight and passenger rail between Fassifern and Newcastle. We are also revitalising Newcastle, and I'm delighted that major construction for the Newcastle Light Rail is well underway on Hunter Street using the $206.1 million allocated towards this project in this budget. This is part of the $650 million we are spending on revitalising the Newcastle city centre. We have been fought every step of the way by the opposition on this. They have sought to delay and undermine this project from the very beginning. They have complained about the route, they have complained about the carriages, but we have been resolute in our commitment to deliver this vital piece of infrastructure for our region from day one. I'm therefore delighted, although somewhat surprised, to report that the Labor Party has gone back on its 2015 promise to cancel this fantastic infrastructure project and reopen the divisive heavy rail line.
Backflip.
I noted with interest that the Labor Lord Mayor of Newcastle during a recent council election announced that light rail is good for the region and she would like to see more of it. The Lord Mayor is now such an enthusiastic supporter of the light rail that she has managed to convince the opposition leader himself, who told the Newcastle Herald that he also supports the extension of the light rail. I am glad the Newcastle light rail no longer divides the Labor Party, like the rail line that divided the heart of the city from the beautiful waterfront. I look forward to the new opportunities that the light rail will bring to the city, and I look forward to more enthusiastic support for the Newcastle light rail from those opposite. The Central Coast and Newcastle regions are set to benefit from fantastic redevelopments to our public hospitals. After 16 years of Labor neglect, our hospitals in this budget includes more money towards Maitland, Wyong and Gosford hospitals. These three hospital upgrades alone will represent almost $1 billion of investment and it is a fantastic recognition of their importance in these areas. The ageing Gosford Hospital is an example of the disdain that Labor holds for the Central Coast. They had 16 years to do something about the state of it and could not deliver any improvements. Now, the Gosford Hospital redevelopment is well and truly underway, nearing completion even. Now, the Gosford Hospital stands 11 stories tall and a helipad on the roof. The Health Minister and I visited with the member for Terrigal just at the end of last year.
What about the member for Gosford?
I got to witness the topping out ceremony at the 11th floor where the new helipad is located. The redevelopment will include a new emergency department, an intensive care unit, extra operating theatres and 800 new car spaces. The total investment in Gosford Hospital by the Liberal National Government sits at $348 million, of which $87.2 million is to come from this budget. If you want to see an example of the excellent management of infrastructure by this government, you need to look no further than the fact that we were able to save $20 million from the cost of this redevelopment, and I am happy to see that money is now going to be used to contribute to a medical research unit just next door, thanks to the advocacy of federal member Lucy Wicks MP. The total cost of this project is $75 million and is being jointly funded by the federal and state governments with the University of Newcastle and will deliver the first university campus in Gosford CBD. This government will also spend $30 million for the full implementation of the helicopter retrieval network service, including the provision of doctors on every flight with 7 bases across the state, including Newcastle, operating 24/7 and allowing aircraft to respond to emergencies more effectively. You don't have to look far to see examples of the poor foresight and lack of investment by the previous Labor government. A terrible example of this is the Carryong Fire Station, which was built by the previous government with space for just 2 trucks. The Central Coast is a growing region and the Carryong Fire Station now has 3 trucks, one of which has to be parked outside, you see. This budget allocates $2 million to be spent over the next 2 years to extend the station to ensure that it is able to respond to the future needs of our community. We will also spend an estimated $3.6 million on the new fire station at Maryland and $587 million on an additional prison capacity at Cessnock Correctional Centre. In his budget speech, the Treasurer said, "The primary obligation of governments is to keep their citizens safe." I want to acknowledge the efforts of Central Hunter, Port Stephens, Newcastle City, Lake Macquarie, Tuggerah Lakes and Brisbane Waters local area commands in their efforts to keep our communities safe. Their efforts have seen incidents of most crimes reduce or remain stable over the last 6 years in their regions. This government continues to support them, and we now have 16,700 sworn police, more than ever before. There are some fabulous national parks and bushland north of Sydney, and residents know that the threat posed in summer by a fire. We have seen it over the last few years, particularly at Lake Marmora in 2013 and recently in Port Stephens. To support the Rural Fire Service and Fire and Rescue New South Wales over the next 4 years, $38 million will be spent on aerial firefighting capacity, including Nancy Bird, which has been active in Newcastle and Port Stephens, and $8.8 million to maintain the emergency alert warning system. The budget also contained $2 million for the completion of the new rock groin at the entrance. Fixing the sand loss problem at the entrance beach was a really important issue to our community. The rock groin will mean that sand is retained on that beach for longer, keeping it open for locals and tourists alike. This was yet another election commitment delivered by the New South Wales Berejiklian government. I recently visited Blacksmiths Beach in Lake Macquarie with Lake Macquarie councillors Kevin Baker and Jason Pauling, where the coalition government is providing funding for a drone to improve shark observation and beach safety. The funding from the government will strengthen the council's capacity when it comes to providing accurate real-time updates on shark sightings. New South Wales is leading the way when it comes to job creation, Mr Deputy President, with around 190,000 jobs created since 2015 alone. I've already spoken about the significant number of people from the Central Coast who travel to Sydney or Newcastle each day for their employment. The goal should be that these people are able to work where they live, and I'm proud to be a part of a government that is delivering on its election pledge to relocate 300 public service roles to Gosford CBD. Construction on the new Department of Finance Services and Innovation building is well and truly underway and expected to be completed later on this year. This is right next to the new ATO office recently opened by the federal government, which will result in 600 more jobs in our Gosford CBD this year. These new workers will go some way to energise the local economy and create more local jobs. I'm very pleased that the Central Coast Community College and Tuggerah Lakes Community College are among 34 community education and training providers throughout the state that will benefit from almost $19 million in state government investment for community training. These facilities play an important role in providing formal education qualifications and strengthen students' chances of gaining employment locally. I mentioned earlier the government's investment in a medical research facility at Gosford Hospital. I'm glad that we are also delivering school upgrades at Rutherford Public School, Belmont High School and Wamberal Public School, amongst others. In total, this budget commits to $4.2 billion in capital works at schools over the next 4 years. In the next 2 years alone, we will deliver more than 1,500 new classrooms to cater for more than 32,000 extra students. I spoke in my inaugural speech about the anti-bullying program announced as part of this year's budget. $6.1 million will be spent over the next 3 years on resources for schools, students and parents. As I said then, no one should be made to feel worthless or helpless in any environment. I'm glad that this program will support all students because all students deserve our protection against bullying. Tourism is an important industry in Newcastle and on the Central Coast, and I am glad that the New South Wales Government is supporting, with this announcement, the destination Sydney Surrounds will operate from a new headquarters out of Gosford. This office will collaborate with tourism operators from the Blue Mountains to the Hunter to drive increases in the value of this industry to our region. The inaugural V8 Supercars Newcastle 500 was held in November and showcased what a great city Newcastle is. The event was a success with more than 150,000 spectators and $57 million to be invested in a local economy over the next 5 years. Newcastle put on a great show and the pictures were broadcast around the world and they are priceless for our local tourism operators. All in all, this is a very impressive budget and I am excited about the opportunities that it brings to the Central Coast and to Newcastle. We have turned around the fortunes of this state and an impressive number of infrastructure works have been completed or are being well underway. We cannot allow this state to be dragged back into the dark ages by those opposite. In 2011, we made a commitment to New South Wales to make New South Wales #1 again, and we have achieved that. But this is just the beginning. I commend the Treasurer on his first budget and I commend the Berejiklian Government on the strong budget position that delivers for the people of Newcastle, the Central Coast and New South Wales. Thank you, Mr Deputy President.
Mr Deputy President.